Good afternoon, evening, everyone, and welcome to Open Mic UK. Today, my co-host Susie and Kat are off. They're vacationing. Voila, we got our host. we got our guest.
A guest.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
No
It was like something, and it sent me flying into something else. And I was like, oh, that's not what I should have done.
Cyberspace. Beautiful.
And I was about to say, oh, let's go live, and then you disappeared off the screen.
So we went live.
We went live.
So welcome.
So welcome to the show. My co-host today is Tanis Coughlin. Hi, Tanis. And our guest, Jennifer. Actually, this is the second time on the show for Open Mic UK. You can introduce yourself if you want to.
Yeah, sure. So thanks again for having me. This is super fun. And I'm Jennifer Jurkofsky with My Holistic Self Counselling, and I'm also a practitioner and teacher with Twilla Lifestyle. And I'm a registered psychotherapist, certified Canadian counselor, intuitive life coach, energy healer, all the fun stuff.
That's cool. Last time you were on the show, we talked about human design. Let's just say hello to Kaylee. Hello.
Hey, Kaylee.
Hello.
From Ottawa. By the way, today it's a Canadian show, although it's a UK one.
Yeah, well.
But we're happy to be sharing it with you.
Of
The
course,
UK
of
people,
course.
we're happy to be sharing all of this with you. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about human design, and we discussed different what do you call them? Different categories of where people would put in based on their because it's a astrological one, so based on their date of birth and time of birth and all of that. Now, is there more you'd like to add to that topic today to give a deeper insight on different branches of it, or?
I mean, there's always more, if we're being honest.
She's done a whole series.
The iceberg, right?
Yeah.
Like aura type is just like the tip of that iceberg. There is so much more. But what was coming as, you were talking and just before the show talking about kind of like a metaphysical crew and people who are really interested in all of that. It'd be interesting to dive into, why does all of this astrology matter? Like, why does it even impact us? What is going on there? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because, why is it that these, things that are way out there, right, have an impact on us here.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's something that not everybody's aware of, is the actual science behind it.
So Jen's wanting to jump into quantum entanglement and quantum physics.
Go right ahead. All I know, I just did my charts, and with Emma Mitchell, she's an astrologer, and she's going to be on the show in October. And it's dizzying. And I only spent an hour with her, and she sent me the stuff, so I have to listen to the radio, to the recording again, and look at the charts and stuff like that. But man, is it dizzying. So would you be able to deconstruct it for the normal people like myself to understand what it means, or why does it affect us, or how things are aligned? And I know Sirius is in the star today, which is in my North Node. I think it's a North Node. I don't know. And I go like, something's going to happen to me today. I haven't been fried yet, but
it's a really powerful thing, though, right? So recognizing that there's a lot of potential that can come out of today for you.
Mm-hmm. So today is a great day for everybody to keep positive, and it's about manifesting what you want to bring in. So what would you love your life to look like? What would you love to be doing? How would you love to be doing it? Who would you love to be doing it with? Right? characteristics of, not the actual person, because we don't want to get into taking away that person's free will, but all of those things. What would you love to be doing? How do you see your dream life? Today is the day to focus on that. It's all about abundance and manifestation today with the way the stars are. So,
yeah. I mean, you talk about Sirius, and, you know, we shared this with the Sachem course, right? And the origins of where does Lionsgate even come from, right? And it was such a time of transitioning into abundance and protection, because so ancient time calendars were different, of course, than ours, right? And so it was just at this time where Sirius would come up, and that would present the time for them to recognize that the Nile was going to flood.
right.
And it was going to bring water to this barren land so that things could grow again and all of that. And so, you know, the connections there really are about bringing in this change and bringing in this abundance and opening us to, you know, again, it's the cycles, right? Because this was a cycle every year. And so recognizing that we're entering into that cycle of abundance. And so, you know, having that show up in your sun. I mean, our sun is the most influential part of our chart. You know, if we get into the whole neutrino thing, we'll talk about that. But the idea is that, you know, this has a great influence on your day to day and how you show up and how you express yourself. And so to recognize that this abundance is now within that, that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, it's an exciting day for all of that, really. You know, that's and this year in particular is numerologically speaking, it is even more so, because the year is an 8 year as well. So it's 888 this year, not just the 88. So even more powerful year to be stepping into that. It's also considered the Galactic New Year. So, you know, that also is a factor, you know, fresh starts and moving forward with New Year stuff.
That's a left field one. What was a Galactic New Year? Sorry, that skipped me.
Yeah, it's just it's talked about as the Galactic New Year. So it's a time of new beginnings, and probably because of this abundance thing and where it came from, right? I mean, I think that it was, in terms of Egypt, it was this time of abundance, but I think that the galaxy itself has a component in there. And, you know, when we talk about astrology, that's also how that energy comes in, right? So the energy that we get a bunch of downloads into the pyramids in Egypt, right? Goes right into the King's Chamber today. That's where it's all focused.
Oh yeah,
right
the
now.
alignment. Yeah, I got that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the energies that are coming in are that of the galactic energies. And so those galactic energies are of new beginnings, because it's this galactic new year. So, I mean, chicken and egg, which one came first? I don't know, whether it was that and then it became the new year, or whether it was the new year and so the energies have been conducive to new starts. But that is the that's my understanding of galactic new years. It's about the qualities of energy that this particular alignment brings in for us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we talk about like calendars way back when, the new year happened just before all of this, but there was still a very significant time for this. And, you know, with the way that we change and calendars move, like, it's very possible that it's, you know, shifted in such a way that this is now the new year too.
Well, it's a New Year's, like, I think it's a range. It starts on like the 26th of July and moves through till the 8th. So
yeah, interesting. Very interesting.
That's why they told me that I was supposed to start the Galactic Shaman program today, because it's the new year and it's a time of new beginnings, and it's so that's what they told me.
Very cool. Very cool.
And we're moving into. Sorry, my dog is just everywhere right now.
Hi, Bella.
Behave. What was I going to say? Yes, I was going to talk about, like, we're talking about celestial stuff and how do they affect us. And we also have the, what called the meteor shower that is coming up. Well, it's been happening, but the bulk of it happens this weekend, I believe, on the 11th or 11th, which is this weekend, 11/12. How would that also affect our behaviors, or does it affect us globally, or this is just a phenomena that is passing by? And I hear echo, and I hope it's not from my. Is it from me? Maybe it's from me.
Yeah, I didn't hear an echo.
Okay.
You may have something else open at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes to the astrology of it. You know, the energy is anything that happens celestially affects our atmosphere, which can directly affect our energies in that way. So much like the solar flares, they bump up against our atmosphere, creating a higher vibration. I think that the meteor shower would have a similar, you know, not necessarily bumping up against us, but would definitely influence the energies, I would say. What do you think, Jen?
Well, and this is kind of what they were telling me to talk about earlier, is it's not just bumping up against us, it's actually going through us.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what brings, you know, all of this kind of information through. And so what's really interesting is, so, you know, Human Design Ra, you know, channeled all of this information from what he called the voice. And at the time, the voice gave him this kind of download about neutrinos and what that looked like and how that impacted us. And there's even writings that Ra did in the very beginning about how these, you know, neutrinos was kind of what he based everything on, but there was no scientific evidence at the time.
So what,
neutrinos held mass.
So what are neutrinos? What are these exactly?
So let's go through this. So neutrinos are subatomic particles that are produced as a product of fusion in the center of stars. And they contain the tiniest amount of mass that carries info through space. Now you think about this, okay? The sun, 70% of these neutrinos that come through us come from the sun, which is why when we talk about the influence of the sun, and like on Twillo Talk every week, when we talk about the transits, we're talking about the sun transits specifically because 70% of our programming is coming from that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's absolutely fascinating working in the field that I do. I can look at what the transits are going to say, and I can actually have a theme for what that week is going to look like with clients. And what kind of things are going to come up and what's going to be in the forefront of people's minds. And for the most part, there's some nuance of that in every single thing that we talk about, right?
Yeah, because I've noticed that as well. Yeah.
It's such a strong programming. It's unbelievable. And so, you know, we've got these neutrinos that are coming towards us at all times. And it's not like a little bit, right? This is like millions of bits of information that are constantly processing through us, right? And so this is where, you know, you talk about like ghost particles and things like that, because they're so small that we really don't notice them other than the impact that they have on how we feel.
Yeah.
Right? I think when Ra talked about it, like I said, you know, billions, I think he actually wrote that there are trillions passing through us every second.
Yeah. Right? And this is quantum entanglement too, right? Because they carry all of this information and they circulate and we're all connected to it.
Yes. And so everything that they pass through, they're picking up information. And that's the entanglement.
Sorry.
All good.
Speaking of which, I should turn mine off too.
Yeah, because when we're talking about entanglement, the idea is that every single thing that we've come in contact with, we remain in contact with.
Yeah.
On some level. And so now I've got a scratcher behind me. You know, it is what it is. We've got all these noises going on.
It's the
And
day.
so it is. But it's really beautiful because we have this interconnectedness. I mean, we talk about the oneness of all things. And, you know, we've talked on the show about like the crystalline grid and how everything is connected. And we can talk about fractals and all of that kind of stuff. And it's really amazing because we begin to understand that, you know, we have all of these connections and we have all of these things influencing us. And then we have to actually take a step back and go, okay, how much of this is me and who I am? And how much of this is the programming from the connections and all of that that's coming through? And so, you know, we're all connected to this. We talk about like collective consciousness or collective unconsciousness, depending on where we're looking.
Depending on where each person is too.
Right?
Yeah.
But this constant stream of information that's coming to us is hitting all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But when we were born, we were imprinted.
Yes.
With the neutrinos that were present at our time of birth. And this is why astrology and human design and all of that is so valuable and so accurate, right? Because it is an imprint of who we are in that moment.
Right.
And the beautiful thing with human design is not only is it at the moment we were born, but we also look at 88 degrees backwards. So about 3 months prior to our date of birth. And the imprint that we got at that time.
Because that's the pre-birth. So you're in the womb, right? So you're still connecting to all of that.
Yeah. And at that point, you know, when you look at different sciences and things like that, we're picking up on things at that point in our development. Right. And so that influence is there. And then there's even some who, like, if we do like noble design, like, that actually take it a little bit further and actually look at 3 months after we were born and what that looks like too, right? So there's a lot out there in regards to how these different placements really do impact who we are on a day-to-day level, right?
Yeah, it amazes me how accurate it is, you know, with those. So the other thing to note is in terms of language, the downloads that people talk about is related to these neutrinos too.
Oh, most definitely.
It is the neutrinos coming in. So just to make that clear for people that aren't as into that. So
yeah. And it's really fascinating too, because we look at, you know, different things that are going on for each person. And we are so absolutely unique. Like, okay, yeah, there's these main types, 4, some say 5, depends on if you consider a manifesting generator, not a generator, which, whatever, we don't have to go there. But
but we could.
But we could. But the reality is, you know, we have these things that we use to kind of help us understand the energies.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to it than that. Right? And the neutrinos are such a perfect example of that, because now we're not just looking at the sun and where the earth is, even though, like, you know, sun earth for design and personality sides is our incarnation cross. Now we've got our purpose, like what we're here to live out. Right? But then we've got all the other planets and all of the things that they influence for us. And then depending on where they were placed, there's different meanings there.
So that helps to build a picture. So if you look at all of those little pieces of the astrology, you know, they help to build a picture of who we are, right? It's like putting together the puzzle pieces, and each puzzle is very unique. So each of those pieces brings its own nuance of personality, of energy, of behavioral, of programming that we brought in at that time.
All of it. Well, and what's really beautiful too is that we can look at all of this in our chart. Like, I could pull up a chart and look at it, and I could tell you where your core wounding is, the generational trauma that you have to work through, where you sabotage yourself, where you think you need to be that you're not supposed to be because it's not meant for you. The way that you fill those gaps, right? All the conditioning, like it is incredible the amount of information that is in a chart like that. And it also helps us understand, you know, the way that we interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it helps us
Definitely.
give grace to one another.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, I know you and I have talked about this a few times because our designs complement each other in terms of our working together with Twillo and all that, because I'm a manifesting generator and you're a projector, correct? I hope you don't mind me sharing that.
Not at all.
and because of that, like, we complement each other. So she supports me in ways that I get all lost in because she's a projector, and then I do the same with her for other things. And so that's how you can start to which I'm getting tingles on, by the way, just love
it.
But because of that, that's sort of what happens in terms of the interactions, right? You can say, okay, so she needs, and this is something that you and I have talked about before, right? One of the big things, example, is Jen's design. She needs to be invited to do something, right? That's a projector thing. They need to be invited to do something. And as a manifesting generator, my design is to say, hey, Jen, let's do this.
Yeah.
And so I say, Jen, let's do this. And she says, okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's really neat. And, you know, because we talk about, like, you know, project, I love it. Projector and proud. Thanks, Kaylee. This is something that people often, like, you know, don't think about too. Like, projectors, it's not that we can't do anything or that we can't have ideas or that we have to just kind of like sit around and wait for people to recognize. Like,
oh yeah, no, I didn't want people to get that impression. So I'm glad you're bringing that up, because that's not the case.
Yeah, but like, it's really interesting, and this is the dynamic, and this is the beauty of the dynamic. Is I remember, so we do card readings now, and we do live card readings, and it was such a phenomenal kind of example of the way that this energy works together, because Tanis is talking about, you know, not doing card readings for a while, and, you know, it's fun, and I'm saying, yeah, you know, I really love when we do stuff together. And then it was like, oh, it'd be so great if we could do card readings. And then Tanis, I just gave Tanis something to respond to, because that energy is, I need to respond. And Tanis goes, oh, that would be fun. I'd really like to do that. Jen, would you do that with me? And I go, yeah, I would love to do that with
exactly.
you.
That's the perfect kind of example. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we at any point in time, you know, we're not subject to just kind of sitting around and twiddling our thumbs. It's really about just being present with the energy and allowing it to flow, and recognizing that, you know, these things come to fruition in that way.
Yeah. 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 It's very much a synergy between those two types, not just about us, but between those two types, it seems to be. Now, do we know what Ramsey is? Does Ramsey know what Ramsey is? Does Ramsey want to share what Ramsey is?
Yeah. I'm a manifestor generator, I believe.
Yeah, I figured that.
Same thing. Yeah. It's like, let's run.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I have some charts, actually, and let me see if I can do it in such a way that I can mask them, because I think I can do that for them.
Or you can put mine if you want to. I don't mind.
Yeah, or mine. I'm good with that too. So
yeah. What I was thinking is, so I got, hold on, let me do this one. And then for me, okay, for Ramsey, I'm playing around, guys. So give me just a second, and I'm going to get this all together. I'm going to show you guys some really cool stuff that we can do with these charts.
Kaylee says you can use hers too if you want.
Oh, thanks.
You got guinea pigs, hon.
Amazing. Okay, so let me go here, and I'm going to put me back to a normal chart.
Hey, Margie.
Okay. So can I share, present, and screen share.
Yep.
And we're going to go to this guy here, and we're going to go share.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Now, this is so much fun. You guys get me on this. I can play with this forever.
Awesome.
Okay. So here we go. What we're looking at right now is a basic chart. Okay.
Yes.
And so you've got the body graph here, and then you've got a whole bunch of information over here. And this alone gives a lot of insight into what's going on for this person. In this case, this person is me. So, I look at this chart and I go, okay, I've got a lot of definition up here. I don't got a lot of definition down here. My sacral is not defined at all. I do not know when enough is enough. And I push myself too much. I can recognize that right there. And I don't even have a filter in how I navigate that. Not really. But I do have certain pulls, right? I'm pulled to where I have definition across the way. And so we can talk about, all of that. But then I'm going to go over to Ramsey's real quick because I set up a connection chart. And a connection chart is when you take two different body graphs and you put them together. And so this is my chart and Ramsey's chart. And it's interesting because now we come down here and we go, oh, look, we've got all of these different things that connect us. So compromise channels tell us about where one person has a full channel and the other person only has a gate. So these are areas where we might kind of bulldoze each other a little bit or not necessarily listen to each other completely.
Yep.
Dominance channels are fantastic in terms of neither, like one of us has the whole channel, the other person doesn't have any of it. So these are areas where you go, yeah, that's just Ramsey. Or Ramsey will go, oh yeah, that's just Jen. It just is how it is. And then we've got companionship channels. And these are channels where we both have a gate. And it's the same gate, but we don't have the full channel. And so these are areas where we can really go, yeah, I get you. I feel that. I understand. And then we have electromagnetic channels. Ramsey, we must have had so many lives together, I'm telling you. Because these channels are where we complete a channel. So I have one gate, Ramsey has the other gate, and we complete a channel. And so there's a whole lot of those. So together, there's a lot of stuff that we could do and accomplish. These are channels that would make it so there is, an interest in collaborating and working together because we provide the energy of the opposite gate to one another. And so that's a really neat thing to look at, especially if you're in a relationship or if you're in a business partnership or anything like that, to see like, okay, how do we work together? What are areas of, points of contention, and what are areas where we really support one another? And then I got Tanis's chart up here, and I did something really cool on Tanis's. I put all three of us together.
Run.
It's super cool, right? And so we've got, all three of our charts here. And then we look at what it brings together, right? A full, complete kind of chart. And we have something in every area except for commitment.
So none of us want to commit to anything, is what you're saying.
It's fascinating when you really think about it, right? Because there's so much potential here, and we each bring an attribute that can actually make this whole process work beautifully together. But we don't do it all the time, right? We ebb and flow from it.
We need to work on this, guys. Says the manifesting generator. Or one of them.
It's a really neat thing to recognize, because then you can go, okay, this is an area of struggle for us. And why is it an area of struggle for us? Well, we each have, our own things that we're doing as well. And we're kind of ebbing and flowing and figuring out where we want to go. We know that we want to do things together, but it's just not always possible. And so it's one of those things where you look at that and you go, okay, if we want to make this happen, this is where we have to look and work, right? And we have the capacity to do that. And so it's just a really cool thing when I think about, like, you know, all of the different neat things that we can look at with these charts.
Yeah.
And the dynamics that we can understand and the way that they can show up in our experience. Like, it's just so cool.
Well, and the other thing that I thought was really neat, Ramsey and I were talking about this a couple of shows ago on the North American one, and it was about like spiritual business and how do we bring that stuff forward in a business. And human design is one of the tools we can do that with, because Jen and I have talked about the human design of Twillo Lifestyle and what that looks like, because you actually take the date of when you started the business, which of course, when we started, it's really energetically the day that we get our business license. And so we use that and we put that in and we look at what the business strengths are and where we need to, you know, cushion and stuff. So it's really,
let me see if I can edit this one too. There we go. Yeah, it'll let me mask it. And actually, let me pull up. I'm just changing the charts behind the scenes because I want to make sure that I'm not showing like other stuff going on here. Okay, career. There we go.
I'm taking care of that, Ramsey, by the way.
Okay, here we go. Let's go share screen again. And here we go. Okay, so pulled up Twillo. All right, so we've got that in there. And when you look at the energy of the business, right, we've got this beautiful generator energy. There is power to just go, right? And then we can look at the different ways that this energy shows up, right? And so, you know, large business strength, innovation. Oh my goodness, that is so Twillo, right? Like, it's very innovative and an ability to bring, you know, so many things together. The thematic piece of that, empowerment and sharing, that's what you do.
Absolutely.
Right? You know, empower people and share this beautiful knowledge and bring it forward. You know, and then we look at it and go, okay, what environmental style? Solo, you can do it. You can do it on your own, but that doesn't resonate for you. Partnership, not ideal. Small group, not ideal. But what about a center? Right? Ideal.
Large group. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we look at that and we go, okay, I understand why in certain areas things get a little stuck and in other areas they flow so beautifully. Right? We look at, you know, the attributes and the skills that are there and the functions that it can bring. And then we also look at, you know, what might show up as something that we have to work on in that, right? And what kind of things might impact. And all of this shows up for each of us based on our openness. Right? Yep. Because what's happening is the areas where we're open are the areas where we are susceptible to conditioning, where we fall into not self patterns, where we think we have to overcompensate for something. Right? But they're not really who we are, and they don't actually illustrate who we are in any way. But we can look at that and go, okay, if flexibility is an issue, then what do I need to do to just make sure that I'm mindful of that?
Yeah.
Right? And it's a beautiful thing because we're able to actually address the issues and looking at them from a mechanical standpoint as opposed to from a personal standpoint. And it's amazing. I remember I was driving with Ray, my eldest, who was really like looking at the human design, and we were talking about different things, but we were talking about them based on the design as opposed to things that were specifically just observed. And because they were in the design and we were talking about them as mechanics, it was a lot easier for Ray to go, yeah, I do that, don't I? Right? Yeah. And that's the same for all of us.
Yeah, because
Right?
you and I have had those conversations. It's easier to observe it if you have that kind of thing in front of you. And it's very much a mechanics. So it doesn't make it personal, right?
No.
In a way. I mean, it's a personal thing,
That
but
is personal.
the way it's brought forward is not personal. Do you know
It
what I mean?
is
It's not like
personal.
somebody saying, you're so inflexible.
But it's not personal. Like, for instance, somebody who has, say, one of the deaf gates, because there are certain gates in our chart that make us deaf. They make us not hear other people. Okay. And so if we have one of those gates, somebody can say something to us and we can just be like, yeah. And we go off and we do our own thing and we don't listen and we don't get the information. And then the other person is going, why don't you listen to me? Why can't you hear me? Right. And it's like, what? Like, what? There's nothing. And then they go off and do their own thing again. And it's like, and this can cause such friction in a relationship. But if the other person recognizes, okay, it's a deaf gate, you're not going to hear me. You are not going to listen. It is what it is. It's fine. Right. And we get to a place where we just go, okay, just go do you. Just go. Go do you. If you want to listen, if you want some feedback, if you want some help with this. And this is hard as a projector too, right? Because the projector is going to go, oh God, I could see how that could be done so much easier and so much better and so much simpler. And why are you putting all that energy into that thing? Right. But if the person doesn't want to hear it, they're not going to hear it. And as a projector, we can expend energy that we don't have trying to convince somebody to do something that they're just not going to hear us anyway for. Right. And that's why waiting for the invitation as a projector is so important. Because then we're not expending that energy. We could just sit there and watch them struggle. And when they're ready, they might say, got an idea on this one? They're like, actually, if you do, right? And that's fun. But there's a proper exchange of energy with that one.
I'm thinking about all those times we've done that, Jen. I'm off doing my own thing. I'm like, well, that didn't work. Jen?
But it's just such an interesting thing to watch the dynamics, right? And then even to see, as a projector, that bitterness that can come in when you're not listened to or you're not recognized and you're like, oh, you should have. It's like, oh, well, I shouldn't have shared it in the first place. Okay.
It kind of helps you to get into acceptance, though, of yourself, right? Rather than beating yourself up over those kinds of things, right? Mm-hmm. If you know that it's like in your design, you can be aware of it and be like, okay, that's my design. If I don't want to be that way, or I don't want to have that quality or characteristic, then I need to look at that for myself. And how do I want to change that? So it doesn't pigeonhole you, but it does help you to accept where you're at. Exactly. So that you can change if you want to, right?
If you want to, right? And that's the thing, is we don't always want to. Like, let's say manifesting generators. I love you guys. I am surrounded by you guys, and you're awesome. Manifesting generators like to have their hands in a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
A lot of cookie jars everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of cookie jars. And the problem is that manifesting generators sometimes skip steps a little just because they need to get through all their cookie jars, and they might run into a little bit of a hiccup because of that. Right? And manifesting generators do not like to be corrected.
Never. It's not that. Let's just put it out there. It's just we're always right.
I wouldn't go that far. Always right. I am definitely not always right.
But this is the thing, right? Like, you see this moment of like, there's so many things on the go. There's always this kind of rush to get through this thing, to get to the next thing, to get to the next thing, and so on. And then in that rush, sometimes mistakes are made. Yeah. Or things are overlooked. And then the worst thing for a manifesting generator, but that happens often, is having to go back and fix something. Again, it's mechanics.
Yeah.
And this is the piece that's so important, is that if, as a manifesting generator, you just go, yeah, okay, that is how it is.
Yeah.
Now, when we're doing something, it's like, okay, I can rush through this to get to the next thing, or I can take a step back and go a little bit slower,
Mhm.
or I can just plow through and know that I may have to come back and redo something. All of it's okay because I understand the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
It's not really personal now. It's like, this is kind of how I'm hardwired. I can choose how I want to operate within that.
It's kind of a process, right, for business.
Yeah, you're giving yourself a map to see where you are, where you're heading, and where's that fork in the road.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, it's up to you to do whatever you want to do with it. If you want to correct or adjust, that will be up to you. If you're never wrong, which is a good thing, you might just want to reevaluate the situation so that you'll be more right on it than before. I'm joking, but we do have.
You're hilarious. Yeah. Well, and this is it, right? And it's really interesting when we look at, the different ways that, things show up for us, because, let's just talk about like the head center, right? And the head center is about inspiration and, worrying about how we can, answer other people's questions and how we show up and the things that we focus on. When we're defined in that, we have a very rigid kind of way of doing that, right? It's a constant versus undefined where it's inconsistent. But that constant can end up being really kind of narrow. And so we have to be mindful of that. And people on, spiritual journey and doing that kind of stuff, we can either get very, very rigid in this is the way, or we can become very open and recognizing that there's many ways, right? And so we notice, not only is it about our definition or lack thereof, but the way that we're conditioned within that kind of determines what route we take, right?
Yeah.
And so it allows for us to kind of step back and go, if, I'll use the example, right? So Tanis, open head, completely open, right?
Yeah.
I'm defined with 2 gates activated. The thumbs up has nothing to do with that. That's not.
Somebody thinks it's awesome that you're defined.
That's nothing. Let's just leave that alone. But it's a beautiful kind of ebb and flow between us, because, I have a very kind of set way that I bring in information, whereas you have this kind of openness to it. And so we can complement each other in that energy. We can also recognize where we get caught up in our conditioning, and we can support one another in navigating that energy.
Yeah.
Right? But it starts with knowing what's going on within our own energy in order to be able to have that dynamic.
Yeah. So it can be a beautiful tool for any partnerships, like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Any kind of partnerships, friends, business, marriages, any of those things, because you can see the other person's stuff. And if you're both aware of each other's stuff, then you know where to support, how to support, right? Or how to work together if it's a business thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great. I mean, I remember we sat down in the beginning, Tanis and I, and we looked at the chart and we looked at those like compromise gates and recognized where we could bulldoze one another, right? And where we might not hear one another. And we actually talked about it.
Yeah.
And all, and agreed that we were going to hold space for one another in those areas. And I mean, to be able to do that right up front in a partnership is huge. Right? To be able to acknowledge it and say, okay, yeah, I get it. right? This is where I have this channel and you've got a gate. And just because I have the channel and I have a very consistent way that I use that energy, you've got a lot to contribute to that understanding, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't have that conversation, we get so caught up in, well, this is just how it is. I don't need to hear that. Right? Yeah. And so it does allow for a deeper understanding and more openness to one another when you actually talk about that dynamic and how it can show up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it facilitates interactions.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
and you can go back on it. I know that for myself, when we've had discussions, because we do, we have to work things out sometimes. And so sometimes when we've had these discussions, I'll be like, okay, she's a projector. Okay, what does this entail? Okay, I need to support her there. Yes, we talked about that. Okay. I can go through it in my mind because we've already kind of talked about it and brought it forward, and we know each other. So, yeah, so it definitely facilitates the conversation and the understanding for both parts. Yeah. And like you said, it's like also that piece of I can be aware. I can be more aware. Oh, wait, I'm that manifesting generator. What am I doing? Right. I'm doing that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And no one way is better than another, and nothing, defined, undefined, nothing is better or worse. It's our lack of awareness in it.
Yeah.
That really gets us caught up.
And the acceptance of it.
That allows us to move through it.
Right. Yeah. Because if we're aware of it, but we're not accepting of, okay, that's in my design, so it's okay. It's okay if I want to choose to change it, but I need to be gentle with myself because of it and stop. So it helps to take away some of the negative self-talk of things that we might think we're doing wrong, according to what our thoughts or programming is, when actually it's part of our human design to be that way, So we can either accept that and then work to change it and be gentle with ourselves when we don't, or we can bash our head against a wall every time we do it, thinking, oh my God, how can you do something like that? Right?
Well, and that's it. And I mean, Richard Rudd in the Gene Keys talks about the need for this deep, raw inner honesty with ourselves about what's going on for us in that moment, how we're showing up, what we're being triggered for. And if we can actually go, oh shit, yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Right? That's what I'm caught up in. And if we can do that, then we actually have the ability to do something about it. Right? What amazes me is that with all of this human design stuff, you could say that you're all one type or another, but even within those types, there are so many variations that still makes us individuals. Oh, so much so.
Absolutely.
Right? Well, and Kaylee and I have talked about that in terms of, I'm splenic in my authority as a projector. And Kaylee has the G center as the authority. So it's self-guided. And so I, in the moment, can go, safe, not safe. This is what I'm doing. Right? But if you ask me what I want to do a week from now or a month from now, I got to be really careful about that because I have no idea. I really don't. Yeah. Right. And I have no inner authority to tell me what's going to happen a month from now or a week from now or, an hour from now. I don't know. Ask me in the moment. I'll tell you. Right. Whereas that self energy needs to guide. And so, there's to be time to talk it out, to hear yourself say it, to see how you feel as you're expressing it, in order to know if it's true for you or not, if it's correct decision for you or not. Emotional authority, right? Tanis, we've talked about this before too. You've got to ride that emotional wave. Yeah. If you don't let yourself ride that wave and you don't let yourself come to a place of clarity, recognizing that there's never 100% clarity, right? But there is a clarity enough to go, yeah, okay, I know exactly what I need to do in this moment. Right? But you don't ever get there without riding that wave first if you've got an emotional authority.
Or the roller coaster, depending on the day. Just saying.
You know, wave, roller coaster, you know.
Wave, roller coaster.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, Ramsey, pure generator, well, pure manifesting generator, but the pure is the part that says that it's the sacral. In the moment, you ask yourself yes or no question. Is this going to light me up? Oh, hell yeah. Okay, I'm going to do that. Right? Is this going to light me up? Oh, no way. Nuh-uh. Nope, not doing that. Right? In that moment, there's a visceral drain of energy. You go, not for me.
And isn't it always true that no matter which one you are, you want to be one of the others? Sometimes.
It's more intriguing to have extra powers, but the reality is the powers that we hold are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Each and every one of us, right?
Yes. So we should embrace that. And that's just amazing. And it amazes me every time when I learn new stuff about myself through human design, through astrology, my charts that I need to understand a bit more, and so on. It's just amazing how much information it holds about not only who I am, but how I react to the world, to the external world.
Mm-hmm. Or interact. Because we're not always in react mode.
Yes.
Often we're in interaction mode. Mm-hmm.
And anyways, if anybody wants to get their human design done, you can connect with Jennifer at myholisticself.com. And that's it's at the bottom of the screen, so you can connect there with her and she can do that. And if you want more information, Jen was on the call on our show on April 18. Oh my God, time flies.
Time flies.
Right?
Yeah. So that's on YouTube. It's on our channels. I don't know. I'm sure it's on all of our channels on the 18th, April 18th. You can listen to it. It gives you more insight on what it is, what are different types, and so on and so forth. It has tons and tons of information. Just wanted to plug this in before we ran out of time at the end, because we're heading close to the hour.
So the other thing to keep in mind, if you're interested in this, learning more about it, I think Jen is working on a course. So stay tuned.
Mm-hmm.
That will be actually interesting. That will be interesting, because you can always go online and say, "Oh, I'm this," and then you can find a couple of paragraphs or sentences, and it defines the global picture of a person or that specific type. Sorry, but it never goes deep inside to tell you exactly what it is. And what you've done is digging multiple layers in. And even what you just showed us, the merger of the two chart, that was phenomenal. I never knew that you could do something like that, which is amazing. It just puts you in perspective of what's happening around you. If it's your partner, your business partner, or so, whatever it is, it's just beautiful. And all these tools are not to be used for superpowers, but to be used in moving along within life without having to deal with extra stress, because that actually relieves a lot of unwanted stress in our lives, because now we understand.
Exactly. Well, and that's the great work. That's what they call the great work, right? Is getting to know thyself is the great work.
Yes. I love that.
So,
two of my favorites: know thyself and to thine own self be true. We can't be true to who we are if we don't understand it. We don't know.
Yeah.
And you're talking about like the connection charts and things like that. And I think it is important to note that, the moment that we're with another person, our chart does change, because we're in that aura energy of the other person, and it does impact us.
Yeah.
Right. And then we overlay that with the transits. We're constantly changing with the transits. And then we look at our, solar return chart, which is different than our birth chart. And we go, maybe we as an example of this, maybe we're normally undefined in a certain center and we don't really have consistent access to the energy of that center. But for this year, that center's defined and we're like, holy man, I'm just, really set in this. And then the year's over, the transit changes. We don't have access to that again. And then we go, what the heck's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? I could do this before. Why can't I do this now?
And that's where that self-judgment thing comes in, when we could be just in acceptance.
Right. But if we looked at it and we went, oh, okay, this is just, I just had access to the energy and now I don't have access to the energy. Okay. Next time I have access to the energy, I'll do that again.
Yeah. It's a fascinating, the whole thing with astrology and human design and all those other ones. Another one that comes to mind is the Mayan glyphs. And those is another, it's very cool too. If you haven't heard of that one, do some research on that. That's a lot of fun. That's the one I work with, but it's not nearly as detailed as astrology and human design. But if you're looking for a different sort of fun one to do, that's a nice one to play into as well. And amazingly accurate. Yeah, mine was very accurate.
So we still have 3 minutes before we go, 3.5 minutes. You mentioned, like Tanis mentioned, that you're working on a course for human design. What else are you working on, and anything coming up? It's summertime.
It is summertime. So what do we have coming up? Well, we've got Twillo Talk. Tanis and I do every Monday at 5 Eastern Standard, and that's authentic spiritual conversation. And then, pretty much what I've got coming up is actually with Tanis.
We're doing a fair bit this fall, actually, right? We've got a bunch of stuff coming forward.
And so we've got a bunch of things coming up. We've got our live card reading on, I believe, the 18th or whatever that Sunday is. And
we're launching a new program. Peacekeepers of the Light.
Yeah. And so stay tuned for info on that one. We'll have a bit of an info session coming up in September for that. And and then as far as the human design course goes, I am definitely working on it. I actually am, not trying to sell or anything like that, but I put together a coloring book. That's actually a coloring book and a journal. And it's super cool in that I knew I had cards in there still. It goes through, a little bit about each of the types. It talks about, each of the centers, and it connects it to the chakra. And it talks about, if it's defined or undefined and what that looks like for you. And so it was funny because I had put this together and put it out there. And then, actually, I think it might have been Kaylee on one of our shows was like, that can be the textbook for the course. And I thought, you know what? It actually really could, which would be fantastic. And it kind of broke down some barriers for me in thinking like, okay, now I have to kind of revamp this whole thing in order to figure out what I want to do and how I want to teach the course. But then recognizing like, okay, I've already made this tool. And it would be a great thing to use for the teaching aspect of it, and at least for part of it, right?
Yeah, so. And a beautiful visual representation of, and you can very much feel into it then, right? Because it is a coloring book, so you can add the emotion, the colors, all of that stuff, energy flows.
And there's a lot of journal pages and all of that too, so you can journal about what your own experience is like, what you observe in people who are defined, if you're undefined, or vice versa. And so, I think that course is actually closer than I had originally realized because of that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Tanis, anything from your end?
Yeah, it's a big day to me. for me today, because I have the intro to the Galactic Shaman program tonight, and that's at 7:30. And I'm also doing an online ceremony for the Lionsgate. So come and manifest with us today. And then again, the Twillo Talk, as we talked about. What else am I doing? I'm working on a project with somebody in Australia for next week. We're just finalizing dates, so stay tuned for more information about that. Yeah, I think that's it for right now, actually. I'm doing an in-person Reiki level 2 on Saturday. Oh, nope, I'm sorry. I'm on Woo Woo Wonderment as well on Sunday night with Kaylee. And we're going to be talking about Reiki.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's summertime.
It is.
So I'll be retreating into the sun for the time being, but keep an eye on the spiritcafe.ca. There's going to be a session in, where are we? August. We should have a session in August, September, October, and November till we finish this year. So dates will be plugged in as soon as they're available. So just visit us on spiritcafe.ca. And other than that, that's it. Jen, thank you very much for being with us again, which is awesome. And for everyone, if you want to listen to the original, the first event, the first podcast that we had with Jen, it was April 18th. So just look it up on our YouTube channel, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much. And let me see, how do I do this? Hold on. I'm so all right. Have an awesome evening to the UK folks, and have a good afternoon to the North American folks. Take care.